After I posted a picture of some low-carb pizza I made on YouTube, or rather on Facebook, I'm sorry, I had a number of requests from people both online and off for the recipe, so I thought I'd show it to you. There are a number of ways you can make low-carb pizza, but this is my favorite way. I find it's the most satisfying of the different pizza experiences. It starts by taking an ordinary baking tray, and then I just take some cooking oil and olive oil in this case and spread it around. That's kind of a two-handed operation, so I've already done that, but I'll show you the recipe from here. Actually, before I forget, the first thing I do is get the oven preheating. I put it to about 450. So that's the first step. Then while it's preheating, I make the pizza, and I take about half a jar of pizza sauce and put it here as the first layer of the pizza. I like having it as the first layer because that way you get a lot of the pizza sauce taste and it helps add to the pizza experience. And I just smooth it around with a spoon. And then once I've got the pizza sauce on there, I take some cheese. And I just use shredded mozzarella cheese. This is a 2-pound bag, and I use it pretty liberally, but you can use however much cheese you want. But it should be enough to more or less cover the bottom of the baking pan so that it will form a good bit of the substance of the pizza and also will help bind together the different things we're going to put in it. Now you can use whatever ingredients from this point you like, whatever you typically like on a pizza. I like a combination of meat and vegetables, so I take mushrooms, and this is just a 4-ounce can of mushrooms that I've already emptied, and I spread them around on the pizza. I like a lot of mushrooms. They also help with the texture of the pizza because mushrooms don't have a really solid texture. They're kind of squishy, and so that helps out. Then I also like black olives, and so here's a 2.5 or 2.25 ounce can of black olives, and I spread them around too. If you were making this pizza, one of the requests I had asked about, making it for like a Friday meal if you're abstaining from meat on Friday, and it's very simple to do. You just put on whatever veggies you want. I mean, they could be anything, virtually anything you'd find on a regular pizza. For example, bell peppers or onions or things like that. But and then you just stop and don't add any meat and continue with the recipe from a point a couple steps down the road. I'll show you that. I like meat though most of the time, so here's some skinless stadium bratwurst that I've chopped up, and I'll put this in here as the first of my two meats. And it's important to use skinless sausage or whatever kind of sausage you use because the skin, if it has one of those really tough skins, then the baking process can make that rubbery, and that's no fun, that's no good. Then I also like pepperoni, so I just take a bunch of pepperoni and systematically lay it out. There we are. I'm kind of a pepperoni lover, so I tend to do a pepperoni lover style pizza. And I do this more elegantly when I'm not holding a camera, but you know how it goes. So now I've added my meat, and this is the point from which you would resume if you were just making it without meat. But what you do next, and this is one of the most crucial steps, you take, well, I'll give you a look, you take some eggs. You can use fresh eggs, although if you do, you should whip them first, or at least break the yolks and swirl them around. You could use egg whites from a carton or eggs from a carton. It doesn't really matter. I happen to have egg whites here, and I'm going to need to open this real quick because I didn't pre-open it. But once you have your egg mixture, you pour some in, and I use, now this carton is about supposed to be the equivalent of 16 eggs, and I use about a quarter of a carton, maybe a little bit more. I just kind of eyeball it. It is possible, if you like load in way too much of the egg whites or eggs, to turn it into an omelet, and you don't want to do that. So you want to limit the amount of eggs. The eggs are very important though, because they will swell up in the baking process, and they will help bind things together, but more importantly, they'll also give it a kind of, they'll help give it a sort of bready texture because of the way they swell up during the baking process. So then, after I have all my ingredients in place, I typically will add just a little bit more cheese, just as a final kind of top layer to help cement everything together when it cooks. I want a little more than that. There we are. And so that's the basic preparation. Incidentally, I discovered this recipe because a local pizza parlor some years ago during the low-carb craze was doing something similar, and I figured out how to reverse engineer it. But anyway, once you've got your pizza compiled, so to speak, then it's time to put it in, time to just put it in the oven. There we are. And then you just set a timer for 25 minutes and check the oven when your timer goes off, and it should be about done. Okay, so here we are waiting for the timer to go off, and the pizza should be almost done. And just to be a little extra detail oriented, if you want to put it that way, I'm going to let the timer run out for dramatic effect. And here we go. Okay, cool. So we're all done with that. The pizza should be ready to take out of the oven. So let's see how it's doing. Ooh, a little heat blast there. Also, I'm going to turn the oven off and pull the pizza out and set it down. And it smells magnificent, although I know that doesn't translate over the video since this isn't smell-o-vision, a late 70s fad that was used for some films. But in any event, it's looking really good. As you can hear, probably, it is still cooking. It's still simmering and bubbling a little bit. And that brings up the next point, which is, like any pizza you take out of the oven, it's going to take a few minutes to cool down to the point where you can really use it. It's too hot to eat at this moment. If you let it cool down for just a little bit, while it's still warm, you can cut it. I cut it typically into 12 slices with 3 horizontal strokes and 2 vertical strokes, if you want to picture them that way. Gives me 12 slices. The number of carbs, I had someone ask about this, the number of carbs the way I've just made it is about 36 carbs a pan. It's actually a little more, but when you cut it into 12 pieces, the fractions round down, and it's about 3 carbs per slice, which is not very much at all. If you make it other ways, depending on the ingredients you use, it'll come out somewhat differently. One thing to know about this kind of pizza is it is even better when it's had a chance to cool significantly, because as the cheese re-solidifies, it becomes firmer and more like normal pizza. And so if you were to eat it while it's still quite hot, be prepared to use a fork, because although it's delicious, it's going to be kind of gooey. But if you let it wait a little longer and let it cool and become firmer, it's much more like traditional pizza. You can just hold a little square in your hand and eat it like a little slice of pizza, of regular pizza. What I often do is I'll wait for it to cool down, and then I'll put it in the fridge overnight, and then just wrap up a few pieces of it in tin foil and take it to work for breakfast or lunch or whatever. So in any event, that's the basic story, and I hope you enjoy making it yourself, and bon appetit.